wrong. What are we seeing? Something closer to a kind of united glee, at least within the party. That's the theme of today's new cover of New York Magazine that I'm going to leave up here for you so you can drink it in, like so many pina coladas. It features basically every wing and symbol of the party celebrating and dancing, from Obama and Pelosi to Clooney and Beyonce. And Harris, as you see there, sits quite comfortably and victoriously atop a coconut, a reference to one of her funny viral hits that her fans have claimed as their own. And of course, and you see in the text across the coconut, a possible new moniker, I don't know if it'll stick, Camelot, with a K. That's a remix of the Democrats' favorite long-standing dynasty, Kennedy's Camelot, of course, the JFK era and the Kennedys beyond. Now, that magazine cover, they're having some fun with it, like many of Harris's fans, but the excitement is also serious for the home stretch of a high-stakes, expensive, and hard-fought campaign that we expect. Other accounts have noted how Harris led Democrats in basically a week to do something that had elided this party for many, many months. You watch the news, because if you don't, you wouldn't be hearing me. If you watch the news, I think you know what I'm talking about. I think you lived through it. This now is something that was not happening the last several months. This Democratic Party is united, excited, and back at work. Call it the Kamala Harris vibe shift, as one writer put it in the New York Times, noting the race that felt to many Democrats like a dispiriting slog toward an all but certain defeat suddenly feels lighter, hopeful. People are even feeling, is that joy? And the insiders and pundits who had very clearly diminished Harris during part of her tenure as VP, a role that can temporarily kind of shrink a lot of different political figures, well, that looks like a view, and everyone's entitled to have it. You can have any view you want here in America as long as we remain a civil society. But that view does look more bearish than at least the way the Democratic base is feeling about Harris, if not possibly the wider electorate. Because people are now taking in Kamala Harris as a somewhat familiar quantity whose stock appears to be rising, as clips new and old of her zing around the web with a kind of palpable excitement that this is now different than the current president. This is the voice of the Democratic Party trying to do something that, whatever its differences, a lot of people feel is still a very important goal. The voice of a party trying to stop Donald Trump one last time. Are you questioning people like a prosecutor or like a senator?
Both.
I am not going to be confined to Donald Trump's definition of who I or anybody else is.
A crime against any one of us is a crime against all of us.
This is not the first time in my life I've been called names. And it was predictable, sadly.
Do you remember which reggae star you quoted in your announcement speech?
Bob Marley.
Why did you quote Get Up, Stand Up in that speech?
Because it was all about saying we got to stand up for our rights.
So many of us have so much more in common than what separates us.
Harris's fluency with reggae inspiration, as the daughter of a Jamaican, seems to coexist with some of those more traditional credentials, a DA, an attorney general, and a fondness for, and I say this like I try to say so many things around here, respectfully, her fondness for a certain kind of California spiritual chic is playing more like an asset with a lot of young people and Democrats than the supposed gaffe that those quotes or laughs were treated as in the Beltway. Now, you can't measure these vibes or the inspiration I'm mentioning, but you can count $200 million raised here in a week, smashing records, 170,000 new volunteers. Again, we'll see whether they all show up, but if they do, that's a heck of a lot of people. And 3 million new followers on TikTok, where viral political messages reach farther than the television you're watching. It's true. I'm just going to say it's true, whether you like it or not. TikTok, one of the most visited domains worldwide, and its viewership of a big video can outstrip, say, the evening news by double and triple. So Musk and Trump may have what remains of Twitter. Harris has these more influential sites buzzing. As the New York Times put it, more liberals are making this viral Harris content, organic, homemade, faster than any top-down business or campaign can make out of a campaign headquarters. I invite you to think of these as the homemade yard signs of our time.
Bless my soul, come on, who's on a roll? Look Looking like a snack while taking down the Trump patrol.
I think the apple's rotten right to the core from all the things we've done from all the apples. Well, you can't tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. Here we go!
Hey, Kamala, what are we going to say to Donald Trump in November?
Bye, bye, bye.
Now, is this just for kids? Is this just for liberals? Is this just for people who use TikTok? Maybe you don't. There are signs that it is not, that what starts in the kind of creative, super fast, viral energy of today, something that Obama also benefited from with slightly different apps and tactics, is spreading farther. I bring to you a Reagan speechwriter, Peggy Noonan, who now writes for the Wall Street Journal, which is a Murdoch publication that is generally, although not exclusively, but generally very pro-Trump. She sees this dichotomy too. This thing I told you about contrasting the Beltway to everyone else. Quote, among those who follow politics closely and are highly online political content, views of Ms. Harris hardened long ago. Think of people who obsess over the Washington Post and New York Times online or watch a ton of news in the Beltway. But she continues, quote, but to those of relaxed engagement, especially the young, she will be a new figure. They'll be seeing her for the first time. They'll be open, she says, perhaps warning, to what they see. Now, whether you think Donald Trump should not return to the White House, or you really like the Biden-Harris administration, or you really like Kamala Harris, that's politics. Ms. Noonan is referring to something that can happen through politics, but not only of politics. And that is that we might open our eyes again and see the people and policies that are on the ballot this year. Whatever people think of Joe Biden and his record and his long period of public service, there was a lot of evidence that he had become something else to so many voters, something in the way of the clarity of this choice. And it would seem now, as we're still in this now second week, 8 days into this, that this is turning a little bit, that the entire focus here, and we're only in the summer, is now back to the real stakes of these choices, and people might really see them and not be obscured by what even Democrats, what even Pelosi and Jeffries and Schumer thought was no longer the perfect standard bearer in a high-stakes year. Some of the Democrats who seem so despondent are now delighted. Now, tonight we can report there are 99 days until the election. You might say Harris has 99 days, and a day of dyspeptic Democratic anxiety will not be one of those days left. I put in the last reference for one of our guests, Jelani Cobb, Dean of Columbia Journalism School, New Yorker writer, who always keeps a straight face no matter how many music references and lyrics are thrown. Oh, now you smile. Oh, now he smiles.
I mean, I was there. You had me at, let me clear my throat.
Well, right? We have a lot. And I didn't have you at that. The people.
Yeah.
The creators of TikTok had you at that, and a lot of other great references. Let me bring in and welcome to the show an old friend of ours, Joanna Coles, Chief Creative and Content Officer running the Daily Beast, and a long time, talk about magazine covers, a long time magazine journalism veteran. We put that all together to try to take stock. Couldn't ask for two better guests to think about both of this. I'll start with you. This woman running to be the first woman president, the first woman of color president, and tapping into something that, as I just observed, it's not clear all the insiders realized the thirst was out there for 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, the energy, isn't it? And I think what's particularly interesting, too, is seeing that she doesn't seem an isolated figure that so often people do in this race, and certainly her opponent looks right now. She's got a bench of supporters. So you showed clips of her with Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. She's got Mark Kelly. She's got all these great guys, obviously auditioning to be her vice president, but also rallying the troops for her. And then you've got new technology that they're able to take advantage of. So you've got the Zoom calls, right? So we had, 40,000 black women on Zoom, 164,000 white women on Zoom. Tonight it's the white man's call. You may be on that, Ari. I think you can join that too if you would like. So you see this, she seems modern, and I think that's very exciting for voters. She's also new, and something about Donald Trump that we know is he's definitely not new, and I think people feel bored of him and his campaign. He's a genius at television, but she turns out to be a genius on social media. And when we came in, we were all talking about the word weird, which has taken off, which Tim Walz in Minnesota unleashed. And the response doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be aggressive, but about Donald Trump or about J.D. Vance, his vice president candidate. It's just, they're weird. And no one wants to sit with the weird people. You want to sit with the popular people or the cool people. You don't want to sit with the weird people. And they've coined that really nicely.
You know, I think the interesting thing about this is that, you know, beneath all of this, if we think back to 2008, we're talking about kind of barrier-breaking candidacies. If we think back to 2008, Barack Obama existed in a way that was meta-political. You know, he's certainly a political figure. He's running for an office. You know, he has a particular voting record, all of those things. But people understood him to be something bigger than simply the sum of his policy positions. And so this is what they're aiming for with Kamala Harris. And so when you look at all of those different constituencies that held those Zoom calls in order to support her in these particular ways, when you look at this flood of support, the 170,000 you know, volunteers, this titanic haul that, you know, continues at this pace to be $250 million raised inside of a month or whatever. And so astounding. What is everyone buying into? Because you still have to roll out your platform. You still have to roll out the somewhat dull policy positions that you're taking. But people are buying into the idea that this could be a transformative rebuke of all the kinds of tribalism, all the grievance politics, all the resentment, all the looming authoritarianism that they associate with her rival.
And to your point, Obama was strong and he was more liberal on foreign policy and he found ways to differentiate himself. But at that time, I think it's a fair observation that even Americans who weren't directly racist or were open to the Democratic Party viewed his blackness as such a big deal that it obscured the fact that on many issues, as we reported, he was more moderate.
He was.
He was conciliatory. Now, 8 years of presidency, and people learned a lot more, but in the beginning. And I wonder what you think about that in ways that are both potentially positive for the party in unifying, but also interesting just because I know you analyze things and you're not, we have Democrats on who are just speaking for the party, you're an independent journalist, what you think about that dance that she has to do, because there's a level of excitement about her story, identity, style, as I showed, that's distinct from a policy record. And that's to say nothing of something we're talking later in the show with. This is true, but also a bit of a tease. We have the first black woman senator ever elected on the show later tonight, who can tell you about the double standards when she did it the first time, about how liberal, progressive, and every other thing you have to be or not be.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the thing is, you know, when we were looking at it with Obama, I termed it kaleidoscope effect, you know, where people could look at him and see radically different things. Progressives thought he was a progressive. Moderates thought that he was a moderate. Black people accepted him as black, but white people saw him as black, but still familiar in a particular kind of way.
I'll let you finish, but I can give you a Hove bar on that if you want.
I'm always here for a Hove bar.
My president is black, but he's also half white. That means even in a racist mind, he's half right.
Well, you know, there it is.
There you go.
I mean, but I'm saying about this with Kamala, I don't know if we have a bar, you know, for Kamala, but
I gave you 2 bars, and he wants another bar.
No, I'm just saying. But with Kamala or any politician for that matter.